One. Greetings, everybody. George Bruno here with you with a very special guest, Alfie Silva in Melbourne, Florida. Alfie, you have quite a background, and I've followed you for a while professionally. And every time you turn a corner, there's something new. You're just reinventing so many things. And I've been called a Renaissance man in the past, and a Renaissance man recognizes another Renaissance man. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You have a background in hair. Talk about that.
I have a background in hair. 15 years ago, I guess now, I started doing hair. I dated a lot of hairdressers in my early 20s. And
Let's hear it for hairdressers.
Yeah. And most of them always said to me, hey, being that you're a young, handsome man, women would absolutely go crazy if you were their stylist. And I said, that's not a bad gig for somebody. At the time I was singing and I was teaching ballroom dancing, and I said, this might be a nice change up. So I went to hair school. I went to the Paul Mitchell School in Orlando. And
fantastic.
From there,
great school.
Yeah, thank you. My career really exploded. I got to work with some amazing people, went on to working for John Paul Mitchell Systems for the corporation, and opened many schools for Paul Mitchell. So that I really owe a lot to that company. But that's my background. I mean, I got started in really doing hair even before I became a hairdresser. Here we go, another thing that I did. I was a pinup photographer, and I couldn't find anybody in Melbourne that really fit the bill as a pinup. There weren't pinup girls walking around in the street. So I'd find some of these female friends that I had that thought I had that classic face shape and had good hair, and I taught myself how to do 40s hairstyles on that. And I would recreate the pictures of the nose art that my grandfather brought back from the war that he had on the planes. And so I was working for a couple different magazines shooting pinup girls on hot rods and motorcycles, but I was doing it different than everybody. I was recreating these classic silhouettes that you saw. That way people go, oh, that's a Gil Elvgren picture. Oh, that's Sack Time Girl or whatever, which was a B-17. I know that art, but it was redone with a girl sitting on the front of a hot rod instead of being on the side of a plane. So I learned that way, and then it became more interesting to me, and that's why I kind of went out and decided to go to hair school and make money at it, not just doing it as a side gig.
Yeah. Wasn't Jesse James down there in your area as well at one point?
Billy Lane was a famous motorcycle builder, a friend of mine here in Melbourne. Jesse came to town, Indian Larry, Discovery Channel, did stuff with all of them when they were here. But yeah, so that was pretty much our only, other than Jim Morrison being born here, it's our only fame. And Daryl Hammond from Saturday Night Live, right down the street from my shop, was born here. So.
Oh, excellent.
That's it. And me. That's what you got in Melbourne.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I know there's a few 1%er motorcycle clubs in the area, and I've interacted with them on a professional basis, cutting hair and trimming beards at one point. So I guess as hair cutters, we also serve as confessors and priests for people that you'd probably cross the street if they were walking towards you on a sidewalk. But the fact that you do something with their hair and their face, you end up having their complete trust, and you get this pass, and you become a bro pretty quickly.
We touch people.
Yeah.
That's important. And right now it's crazy because we can't.
Yes.
We touch people, and that is true. There are people that have been in my chairs that I'm a pretty tough individual and can take care of myself, but there are people that their pinky is scary to me. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. Now, you had Alfie's Barber Shop for a while, which was what I would call a traditional, I hate the phrase old school, but I'll say a traditional barber shop, because I tweeted something the other day and I said, I'm the real old school barber. I said, when this coronavirus thing is over, I'm doing bloodletting.
There you go. Bring leeches back too.
Yeah, I'll show you how old school I am.
Yeah.
But the phrase has been thrown around. What, I think excessively, in your mind, what is an old school barber? When someone says old school, and I know you recognize that term and operate within those parameters, what is old school to you?
Old school to me was less about, the shop had to look like it was in this town since the 1920s. That was the first thing. But the reputation and the outreach to the community was number one. And it was also the place that my barbershop had to do more business deals and be more influential than the city council chambers.
Yeah.
And I knew that we had to provide a culture. We had to provide conversations that gentlemen were involved with, that was an escape from their everyday life. It's why I always like tiki culture and Trader Vic's, right? You're in the middle of a concrete jungle and you're working this humdrum life. You go onto the city and you're in this tropical paradise and you can escape that. That's what I kind of needed from my barbershop. I needed a place where two guys could sit here that didn't know each other from different walks of life could have a common bond and find that. And one of the ways we did that was by turning our chairs as soon as the two guys started talking to each other. I wanted to make sure all the barbers, it was a rhythm. We created that environment where it was a like I said, a safe place. But being old school, also I wanted to not do steamers for shaves. I wanted to go back to a multi-towel, hot towel and cold towel method as far as shaving was going. I didn't want to use. I would have loved to have used straight razors. However, we use the straight razors for the Japanese interchangeable blade. It's just more sanitary. It's faster.
Yeah.
I tried it the other way, honing a blade and stropping a blade. Having 8 razors. It's just that's. I don't know if that's too hipster, old school for me. I wanted to be
Yeah.
traditional. So,
Yeah.
but I also had to realize that we were also modern, and I had to adapt to modern times. I would have loved to have been a cash-only business for many reasons, because we used an old-fashioned 1920s barbershop cash register, and that sound. I have lollipops on the counters for the kids because it was something, either to get them to sit straight or to, be excited that their haircut was over. So it was building a culture, and it was building something that was a simpler time. I have a tattoo on my forearm of a 1920s visible gas pump. And to me, that's always been a symbol of you went in and all you wanted was a couple of gallons of gas. You didn't ask for your windows to be washed, your oil to be checked, or tire pressure, or a nice hello, or a free air freshener. You just wanted gas. All of that other stuff was a bonus because you wanted to have ultimate customer service. So old school to me meant unprecedented customer service. And that was where old school started for me. It was the handshake era that I saw my grandfathers and my father, that you could look somebody in the eye and you could shake their hand and you knew that you were getting a solid, fair deal and you were getting a solid service. So that to me was old school. And then you build upon, okay, now I know the type of service that I'm going to have because that's just inherently who I am. I'm an old-fashioned guy. So I said, well, now it's time to put the pedal to the metal and find the barbering antiques. I'm actually sitting in what was Alfie's barbershop right now, getting ready for someone to come in and buy some antiques. But the Koken chairs had to be a must. And, I had to have the correct barber poles, and I needed the correct shaving mugs that were on the walls, and just the decor, and it needed to smell the right way, and it had to be Disney World. You had to go in off the street from being in queue and walk in Space Mountain, and you were somewhere in space. And so that's what I created. And with the exception of the terrazzo floor, which wouldn't have been in the shop at the time, I from ground up, the walls, everything I wanted. I didn't do large panel beadboarding. I did single individual wainscoting because I wanted you, if you brushed up against it or touched it, you realize, oh my gosh, this is real woodwork. All of the trim wasn't just a piece of crown molding; it was multi-layer pieces of trim that I designed and my dad
Yeah.
built. Because, and a lot of people said, well, that's really excessive. But it really isn't, because it's like the minute you're on stage and you're watching an amazing performance of Othello and somebody decides to say dude in the middle of the monologue, you are no longer in Shakespeare's time. You are now
Yeah.
stuck in some, and it sucks. For me, it was the square register. That's what was the dude in the middle of my monologue. But
Yeah.
it makes work a little bit easier. But that was old school for me. It was personality, customer service, and people would come in and say, "Gosh, if Disney World had a barbershop, this would be it. It's so authentic." And I said, "Well, Disney World does have a barbershop, and it's not this good. It's
Yeah.
just kind
Right.
of okay." But yeah, so that was my philosophy. I wanted to be a place when I was a kid. My grandpa used to take me to a barbershop, and I'd sit there, and I felt like a man. I felt like a little man. We have a really cool T-shirt that I'm bringing back to the new brand, and it's the T-shirt we have for kids. It says, "I learned my first curse word at Alfie's." And that's just that's the first time I heard somebody curse too, was at a barbershop. I was like, oh,
That's
that's
great.
cool. I'm a man now, so I wanted that to be that experience for the younger men in our shop as well, to be a cool place they could feel that kinship with other people in their dad.
Yeah. Yeah. I was raised in a barber shop. My dad cut hair, and the smells the sights, the jokes, Life magazine, newspapers, a black and white TV that eventually had a coat hanger as an antenna or a piece of foil or something. And when they had moved from New York to Florida, my dad cut hair at Patrick Air Force Base for many years. He ran the shop there. He ended up leaving there because that was it was an assembly line. We're talking 60. He would do 60 haircuts a day. And that was just, and I think at the time they were getting $3 or $4 a haircut. It was ridiculous, something like that. Then he left and he went to, I think it was called Beachside Haircutters, if I'm not mistaken. And it was in a little strip center on A1A near, I remember eating breakfast at a place called Sun on the Beach years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
yes,
it was his
Satellite Beach, right?
Yeah. His place was called Waterfront. It wasn't Beach, it was Waterfront Haircutters. That's right. I remember now. And he cut hair there, I guess, until the owner got arrested for dealing drugs in the back room or something like that. And so now he just cuts friends and family at home and actually doesn't cut publicly anymore. But he's like me. He brings his cutting bag everywhere he goes. And people always say, hey, you got your clippers with you? And he's like, oh, as a matter of fact, I do. So he will cut hair on his last day of life. Barbers don't retire.
No.
They
only get a close shave.
Yeah, that's it. All right. So now you have gone in a different direction. Tell us about that.
For 6 years, you're in the business. For 6 years, when I started Alfie's Barbershop, I was in a small shop with a barber named Steve, who had Harbor Clippers here in downtown Melbourne. And Steve had been at it for 35 years in downtown Melbourne. And I went in, he was getting ready to retire, and I went in and I was a hairdresser by trade. At the time when I went to go to barbering school, barbers were still making $7 an hour, and I was like, I can't spend all this money to go to school and make $7 an hour. And I thought that, it was a good idea to be a hairdresser because I liked the scenery a whole lot. And I had that great opportunity with Paul Mitchell. So I put an ad out there. If I opened a barbershop, I was looking for young barbers who wanted to work in an old school, there's that word again, an old school style barbershop, old fashioned barbershop. And I got a great response. And I said, man, I got to open this. And I had no money. I'd just gone through this horrible divorce and custody battle. I had no money. I had 3 Coke and barber chairs that I bought just as a collector, not even to open a barbershop. 5 years before I opened. And I took them out of storage, and I told the landlord where I was. I was like, listen, I'm going to open the shop. I promise you after the first month I can give you money for rent, but please just let me get in here. And he did. And had a friend that gave me $1,500 to pay him, and can I get open? And then I said, okay, well, this is great. Now I have a place where young barbers can come in. I can inspire. As a motivational speaker, I can try to help them build their strengths and keep them forward-focused thinking. And we can create a cool little barbering culture in here where we're not getting your typical barbers who were coming out of school at the time. So after 6 years of 6 months there, I had to expand. So I opened the second version of Alfie's, moving the first shop 1 block over to where it is now on Municipal Lane. And that had 5 chairs. And I started to phase myself out because more barbers wanted to work. So I turned my customers over and continued to grow and train barbers in the shop. Because, you're only learning so much in school. You're not learning, and you really learn when you have people, right? And you're learning the business in the business. And it sucks that we don't have an apprenticeship program here. And essentially, we were doing an apprenticeship program in the shop. And, I started getting tired. The more I taught, the more they left. And the more I taught, the more they left. And, I decided Cocoa Village asked me to open a shop up there. Many people said, please bring a shop up here. Please bring a shop. Well, not willing to do sorry, real quick. Had somebody try to call in. Not willing to do the same thing twice. I wanted to change the concept a little and do what I loved, which is smoking cigars and pipes. So I made it a cigar lounge and barbershop. And it was a great concept. People were calling, ringing up the hook. And at the time when I announced that to my barbers, I was 2 years in the process of finding a space, and I was 6 months after I found it, announced to the barbers I was going to do it. And at that time, 2 barbers said, we're going to open a shop in Cocoa Village, and we're leaving you. And I said, well, what's your address? And they told me, and they were 2 doors down from my new shop. And they said, please don't open in Cocoa. Don't do this to us. That's messed up, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'm not really invested in the politics of this, but I was hoping that you guys would go and work in that shop up there, but you have different ideas, and that's fine. And you'll be fine because I'm a different concept. So I'm a cigar lounge barbershop, and you guys will carry on a traditional barbershop like we have now. And I hired 2 more barbers in Melbourne to take their place. And those 2 guys left and opened a shop in Titusville. Meanwhile, it was hard enough to find barbers to fill their positions in Melbourne, let alone find barbers for cocoa. And it's interesting in business, you go out of business because you have a really crappy product, or you have a bad business model or business plan, or you don't have the customers. Well, I had all of that good, but I didn't have the employees. So ultimately, after a large investment in all of my savings, I closed the cocoa shop because I couldn't even get the doors open because I couldn't find the client or the barbers to take care of all the clients we had. So when that happened, I decided I would take my resources and sell some of my stuff and open an antique store connected to the Melbourne barbershop, so I could get rid of the storage units of antiques I'd collected over the years. And it started to fulfill me because I was designing for businesses and people, and I was finding that one piece for private collectors that they had to have. And I mean, I'm a designer at heart. That's what I am. I'm a designer. I mean, I live to design spaces and collections. So when the pandemic happened, I just got to a point where a lot of the barbers were like, we're not sure we can come back. We don't know if we want to come back. And personally, I was sick of being a full-time barber builder. And I wanted to get back behind the chair, and I didn't want to do it in Alfie's. This shop for me was an educational platform, and there was so much stress that went along with that what I had in here was no longer a comfortable feeling for me. I loved the antiques. I loved the location. It's beautiful. But on every corner now, somebody has done a watered-down version of my shop.
Yes.
And that's great. But like I said, I'm not willing to do the same thing twice, and I'm also not willing to be just another. So when I decided to close during this pandemic, I said, I told my girlfriend, Kimberly, I said, Kim, babe, now it's time for me to go back to music. I think I don't want to do this. And Nikki Blades, who works for me, who's amazing, his eyes welled up in tears. We live in the same neighborhood, and he was in my front yard. And I said, Nick, I'm sorry. I think this is it, man. I can't do it anymore. I'll help you, whatever I can do. I'll tell the clients wherever you go. The other barbers already decided to leave. And Nick, like a musician like myself, he's always been like my son. And he's weird and he's quirky, but he's an art type, like the rest of us. And he's creative. And I just felt so bad. I went in the house, and Kim was making dinner inside, and she could see through the windows. I'm talking in our front lawn, and she just see Nicky pacing and shaking his head. And I came in the house, and she goes, well, I'm sure that was hard, poor Nicky. And I said, well, no, babe, I'm going to open another shop. And she goes, wait, what? And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have the money. I don't have a space. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I can't let Nicky go out in the wild. He only wants to work with me, and I only want to work with him. And so, as luck would have it, a really cool space that I loved came available on the second floor of a place. And I said, I met with my buddy Mike, who owned it, and I said, Mike, give me the specifics. He made me a great offer, and I was stuck. How do I redesign? How do I rebrand? And I'm in tears in the kitchen, sitting at the counter talking to Kim a couple nights later. Now, meanwhile, the day before, I was going out of business. I had nothing. Now, the next night, I'm losing my mind, trying to find a concept that's fresh and different. And she says, well, babe, you're a musician first and foremost. You're one of the most talented singer entertainers that I know. And that's where your blood is. Your heart and soul is music. And Nikki's a musician. Just think about that. And I went, music. It's going to be music themed. And it's going to be sense memory. You're going to go in and you're going to hear music you like. I wanted to have an ability for you to come in and tell me, hey, what do you like to listen to? And then you can pick it out and listen to it. But I've always felt like I went with what I know. And once that happened, it all just goes, the explosion happens, my creative mind. Yeah. I mean, I go into another realm. Yeah. So I had to rebrand. And when I was teasing you guys, online, I wasn't trying to. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I needed more time. So I was like, wait, it's going to be really great. It's going to be something no one has ever seen or done before. And I knew that would be true. I just didn't know what it was. So when I launched it, I said, it's going to be Alfie's and Company. And then I went home and I go, it can't be. I don't want it to be Alfie's and Company. I want it to be something that's important to me other than my name. I want it to be music, right? That's the theme. I got to change it. And I said, what about East of Memphis? And Kim was like, oh, I love that. What did you mean by that? I said, well, Memphis is my heart and soul. I'm trying to make it about music. And I said, but for me, my heart and soul is in Memphis. And what's east of Memphis but Nashville? And that's where my country roots come from. So as a singer in Memphis and my roots in country in Nashville, I was like east of Memphis. And I looked up online what the mileage was between Sun Records studio in Memphis and the RCA Studio B, where all the greats recorded, and it's 212 miles. And I kept going 212 from Memphis, 212 to Nashville, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, east. It's just east. It's east of Memphis. It encompasses the city and everything east of it, and my love for Tennessee. So that's it. So I rebranded music-wise. And I got to tell you something, man. George, for the first time, and I can't remember, I am so passionate about hair again and music and putting the two of them together. I'm a whole different person. So.
I love that because the salon that I work at is now closed because of the lockdown. I have a traditional, like a traditional men's grooming studio at a salon. It's down the hall to the right. The ladies are in one section of the building. I'm like way in the back. It's masculine. It's private. Has its own bathroom, its own entrance. It's nice. And we're having more staff meetings now during lockdown than we did when we were actually working. So every Tuesday night, we just all get on a Zoom meeting together. And they're feeling like they want to try something a little bit different. It's not, we just don't want to do Allura. It's called Allura Salon. We don't want to do Allura 2.0 when we open back up again. Something has to change. Something has to be different. Something's got to be tweaked. We need to add some octane to the fuel. It sounds like that's what happened to you. You were getting tired of barber shopping, old school, traditional antiques, barber memorabilia. And this is so fresh sounding. You have an injection of life. I can see it in your face. I can hear it in your voice. And I think if anything good comes out of a lockdown, it might be that people are realizing they need to and reinvent themselves. Some will just open up and it'll be just continuation of barbershop 1.0. Where did this injection come from? What happened to you? Were you getting coached? Did you wake up in the middle of the night? Did you have a dream? What happened?
I knew I'd been tired for a little while with this. I did a lot of time at home, but I started going back into music and I started singing. And I said, I had filmed a TV show for Disney Plus last year, taking me back to high school, and we redid our high school musical, the show called Encore. And I kept thinking, I had to look back at music, look back. And I was just sitting on the couch a lot. And as we do, we start to feel sorry for ourselves. But, as a motivational speaker, I've never been somebody who was scripted. I've never been somebody who said, do this, it's going to work, as I talk to you from my mansion. I don't have a mansion. And if I did, I would never speak to you as if I was on a different level than you. Yeah. I would always speak to you, as a human first. So I always found that my inspiration as a motivational speaker always came from my hardest times. It was a way for me self-realization and realized how bad I had it and how I never wanted anybody to go through what I was going through or what I felt. So I think this kind of came in the same thing. I said, I don't want people to go back to just business as usual. We've all been through something that other than our grandparents and great-grandparents have ever been through something like this. And I didn't want to do that anymore. Status quo has never been okay with me. I am extremely neurotic. I am so detail-oriented. I have to feel it, smell it, eat it, touch it, breathe it. And I have to live it in my mind before I ever let anybody know what I'm talking about. I failed it in my mind. I've succeeded it in my mind. I've seen the possibilities in my brain before I even say, what do you think about this? Because I fear failure so much. But not as much for myself, but as for the fact that when I fail and I get in that depressed kind of funk that we all get in, I'm no longer good for anybody else. And I've lived my life taking care of other people that I kind of went inside myself and said, it's time to start taking care of myself. And when I realized that I could make an impact and do something different, and also very selfishly put myself in a position as a designer again, so I had something to design. The hardest thing during the pandemic was making sure I had enough money to pay for my storage units full of antiques for when I have a crazy hair across my ass to do another design someplace, because it's hard to acquire this stuff and it doesn't exist anymore. So I went through a storage unit with all my music stuff, and boom, I had all the stuff. So that charge and that energy, it really came for the first time in my life feeling like I had somebody who was my partner and somebody who believed in me and would allow me to fail if I needed to and make it okay if I did, but also told me straight up who I was, what my value was, and allowed me to see that in myself. And that was the charge for me. I'm gonna get emotional, but that was the charge for me. So as a caregiver, we always put other people first, and we go without. And I've always been okay with that. And I've done that in my shop for my clients, and I've done that in my shop for my barbers. And I think that and I wanted a place now that was masculine, but also okay for you to just be sensitive to. I find that the greatest, most masculine, courageous, brilliant men in my life have also been very sensitive and emotional. And it's that time when you are allowed to be that. I used to box, for crying out loud. When you're allowed to be that, you become more creative and more relatable, and you're able to relate to yourself, which is the most important thing. And I found that moment, and the pieces all fit into place. And I listened to my heart, and I listened to people who truly cared about me, and I didn't try to say, no, I know. But it's not sounding conceited, but you have to love yourself and realize how important and great you are. And I know what my strengths are. And in my motivational seminars, I teach a program called Building Your Strengths. And it's not about your trade. It's not about you as a barber. It's about you as a person. It's about bringing who you are to the table. If you're an artist, I want to hear about and see. When I go into salons to consult in barbershops, I'd say, all right, I want to go see your house. What are you into? And they go, well, this doesn't make sense. And I go to their house, and nothing in their house looks like their shop. And they go, well, it shouldn't. I go, no, it should. Because if you come by it naturally and it's you're going to have all your passion in it. And you're going to be your clients are going to know that it's real and it's you. And so you have to be. I know I'm a great designer. I know that I will bounce back from anything. And I know that I'm a great person. And I know that I'm really giving and kind and considerate. And I get beat up a lot for that. But I will never allow 1,000 people to treat me like crap and take advantage of that generosity. I could never allow that to change me for one person to not be loving and caring and giving. I'll still give of myself. So that self-realization was the charge. That need to continue to take care of the people that I love. The outcry, unbelievable messages from our community. Please don't close. Please do something else. Please, downtown is not going to be the same without you. Central Florida is going to be at a loss. I was so overwhelmed, and I said, yes, it will be at a loss. There are other shops that you can go to, just like I tell the people. If they call and I go, your barbers have your information. If they want you to follow where they are, they'll call you. I've always given them all of your contact information. It's not my job to call you and say, hey, so-and-so's not here anymore. He's at this shop. You should go see him. You're welcome to go with them because I want you to, get in where you fit in. If you like that barber and you have a rapport, I don't want you at my shop because I want you to be comfortable first and foremost. So I've always given my client list to all the staff. But if you want to stay here, you're always more than welcome because we're going to take care of you, and it's always going to be business as usual, the Alfie's way, and we're going to show you that. So that was my charge, my need to continue to serve, and my need to show that it's okay to be vulnerable, and in a time like this, and it's important to inspire in a downtime, and that's when I think we can become most valuable to those people around us. So that's my long-winded philosophy.
How very John Paul DeJoria of you.
He's
mine too. Mine too.
Paul Mitchell was. I talked about building my strengths, and I went as a future professional hairstylist from Paul Mitchell, the school, Orlando. I got asked to perform at hair camp at Signature Gathering in Las Vegas, and they said, we want you to sing a song, and then you can either sing another song or you can address the people. And I ended up addressing all of the artistic directors, the entire company at hair camp. John Paul was there, and now I'm had to check my pants before I went on stage because I thought I'd messed myself. I was so nervous. I sang a song, and I said, John Paul DeJoria always says, on behalf of the hairdresser. He never says, on behalf of John Paul DeJoria, on behalf of Paul Mitchell. He never says that. He loves this community so much in the world of styling and grooming and this self-need we have to care for people as caregivers, this self-need, I like to call it. That he always says, on behalf of the professional hairdresser, I donated so many millions of dollars. I created this. And I said, I just want you to know that it's so important to me on behalf of the future professional hairdressers. As a future professional, I will continue. And that's when I started writing my motivational seminars. I went to schools as a future professional. I dedicate my life and my career as a stylist to giving back to the upcoming generation of stylists and barbers. And I got a thunderous applause, standing ovation. I walk off stage, John Paul DeJoria. I always tell him, I said, it's so funny, JP, your ponytail's flying in the wind as you're running in your cowboy boots down the hall in the Venetian to get me. And he said, wow, wow. And you know how he talks. He's just so calm. He's like, wow. He's like, you have got it. He's like, it. He's like, whatever you want to do in this business, you're going to be successful. I want you to work for this company. You can do whatever you want. And he got the two heads of education and the vice president of director of, at the time was Brent Golden, senior director of sales for John Paul Mitchell Systems. And Tommy Callahan, was the director of education, great friend. They sat down and they said, we always needed, other than Robert Cromines, we needed somebody who's an entertainer, but we needed somebody who was, also motivational. Robert's very business oriented in sales and a great leader that way. We needed somebody. So whatever position you want, we got to try to fill it. Well, they gave me regional sales director of colored educator, and I hated color. But I sat with Nick Napoli in Los Angeles at our headquarters, and I learned every color line so I could do the features and benefits of what was great at Paul Mitchell. But it was that moment with JP that he said, you're destined for something great. And it was that belief in somebody who I value so much as a human being. He's so remarkable, and he's always been so inspirational. And I felt as though that it wasn't like a passing of the torch, but it was kind of, he lit my torch. And he said, okay, and everybody would be like, you're going to be the next Robert Cromines. You're going to be the next John Paul DeJoria. And I said in front of Robert and JP, when people said that, I go, I don't want to be the next Robert or JP. I want to be the next Alfie Silva. I want to be the biggest. And, and JP and Robert both go, that's why you're going to be the next whoever you want, because you want to be yourself and you want to give of yourself. And fortunately, though, I'm still an associate for Paul Mitchell, and I go and I speak and do that stuff. But, having my own brand and my own corporation, I'm Alfie's first and foremost, and now East of Memphis. So yeah, that successful people do what unsuccessful people fail to, and success unshared is failure. Giving back is the new black, our campaign when I was with Paul Mitchell. That's how I wake up every single day. And I've always believed you climb the corporate ladder with two hands on each run and both feet, and the people going up ahead of you, you encourage. The ladders to the side of you, you encourage them. And when you get up to the top of that platform, you're not pulling the person down or kicking the person under you or tipping the ladder over. You're going up there and you're building this wellness, giving back culture on this platform, and you're helping the people up. And I've spoke to doctors groups and attorneys, and I always say, if you're not giving back to up and coming physicians or up and coming nurses or up and coming attorneys, then you're a failure at your business. You have failed your industry if you don't give back and give an internship or donate money or time to these industries. You're a failure. And that all was born from literally a 15-minute conversation backstage after singing a song and speaking to the Paul Mitchell. And Paul Mitchell to me will always be the greatest hair company in the world. I don't care if you like the products or not. It will always be the greatest company because it's always the people behind the product that have made it so special. And John Paul DeJoria being, my main mentor, and definitely Robert Cromines and Stephanie Kachowski, who I worked with, who have always been so loving. I mean, I got my first thing was before I did all that, I would go to the premiere hair show and I'd see that Robert and Stephanie and Takashi and Angus couldn't get through the crowd to get back to the prep room to get their models to go on the main stage. So I'd stand next to Robert and I'd say, okay, let's go. And I'd walk Robert through the crowd and I would stop people. Okay, one picture, we got to move on. Now, no one told me to do that. And then people wanted to take a picture with Robert and go, no, get in the picture too. So when a publication would come out, it would say Paul Mitchell Artistic Directors, and I'd be in the picture. So I got this face recognition, but I saw a need for my idols in the hair industry to get back and forth so they could get back to the stage to inspire people. And I wanted to see them inspire people. So I created that need to, I'm like, oh, let's go. No more pictures. Robert will be back. I promise you can get a picture in a second. And then by the next hair show, Robert would be like, where's Alfie? Hey, come with me. I'm over here. I'm going to leave the stage. Not working for Paul Mitchell at the time, just a future professional. And so that really is, that's my spark.
You became their handler, so to speak.
It was a handler. Yeah, I saw that need for that.
I love that. Yeah, success leaves clues, and John Paul DeJoria certainly has left us a lot of clues, hasn't he? I like to say that there's one speech he has on YouTube, and he was a guest speaker at Stanford Business School. I call it the 1 hour MBA. It's the finest 1 hour speech on business I've ever heard in my life. And I tell a lot of my followers, go watch that and then get back to me. Everybody gets back to me and they're blown away. And these are people who are not in the industry, who never heard of him, and they're just speechless.
He's a brilliant man. I mean, if you just think of the companies that he started in a, and it was never about, it was always about giving back, and
Yeah.
it's miraculous. It's just been a definitely, that's been my Bible of business and Bible of hair. And he's definitely been my Messiah as far as, how to structure my life in this industry and just in life in general.
What will a person experience at East of Memphis Hair Company?
You're going to get 100% passion. Not that you didn't get that at Alfie's, but you're going to get that cutting edge feel that I had back then. I'm going to say, okay, so you've had the same haircut now for the last 6 years. Maybe it's time to move into the next generation of hairstyles. It's that, I used to call it the little black dress factor. And by that, I mean, a woman in 1986 went out on a date and went out with her friends, and she had this little black dress on. And she got more compliments that night about how great she looked, that for the rest of her life, she tried to wear that little black dress, the same cut, the same style. Meanwhile, or the man, got a great suit. I love that tie, so the guy wore the tie out. But so for all this time, you never got the opportunity to change because you thought you were at your best then. That's why we overdo a style. So now it's time to go back and get that trust behind the chair and say, no, I got you. I promise you that we are going to find a style that you're going to get that accolades again, and people are going to tell you how great you look. We're going to be a little bit more fashion forward. We're not going to be restrained as far as, well, we're this classic haircut, so we're going to give you a 0 up to a 2 with a hard part and, comb over. We don't have to live in that world anymore. It's time to, get back to some texture and maybe a little bit more length in places. It's time to go and see what's going on in the world of entertainment. So you're going to get that. We're going to be definitely inspired by that. And just really getting back to making sure people are comfortable. And I know yesterday was the first day there, and I've been moving stuff, so I haven't been behind the chair, but I wanted to be there behind the counter all day and listening to stuff. And people are like, well, this is different. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be. So you're going to get that. You're going to get that fresh feel. You were going to get that. And it also goes back, another mentor. I worked with Vidal Sassoon for a small period of time, and Vidal, very, very soft-spoken, but you knew what he had to say. And I remember Vidal, that concept of Vidal Sassoon was everybody was cutting hair, but Vidal did something so beautifully and gracefully that was different. He just combed hair and let it live where it wanted to live, and that whole phrase, let it live or let it be, he just combed hair where it was and created a whole, wow, the hair doesn't have to stick up anymore. I'm not fighting it. And that for me was, his studio's on the second floor in London, and there's different places, these lofts. That's the space I have now. I have a loft, and I have multiple spaces in there to create that environment back where hair was everything. And we mixed music, because you always remember your first kiss, what song was playing. You remember when your dad passed away and what song played on the radio. You remember your grandpa's favorite song, or when he sat on his lap, what song was playing in the background. You remember your first beer. You remember the first time you made love. You remember your wedding song, your first dance. That's how important music is, and that's what we're going to do with your style. You're going to get your life back through a great hairstyle and take control of your look, and you're going to remember the music that got you there. So that's important to me. I wanted that sense memory to come into place along with music, and since we're passionate about that, that's going to be our number one.
Excellent. How can people find you? I know you're in Central Florida. You're in Melbourne, Florida. I know I have followers in that area. People come from about 28 states and 8 countries to sit in my chair. I'm happy to say that. And I know people who love quality don't mind traveling at all. Sure, there's the people who roll out of the sack, travel a half mile, get their hair cut. But after seeing this, I really think there's going to be some people who are going to want to sit in your chair and make the drive. How can people find you?
Coming out of retirement, I haven't cut hair behind the chair for a while full time, so I'm really excited about that. Well, they can find us on social media, which is Memphis Hair Company, on Instagram and Facebook. Our phones are getting installed today, or I would give you the phone number, but definitely online, East of Memphis Hair Company. And we are downtown Melbourne. We are, if anybody who knows downtown Melbourne, there's Olivia Bowen Bridal, which is a wonderful shop, a girl I went to high school with. We're above there by Iron Oak Post Bar. I call it the elbow. So if you're coming from US 1 and you're coming down Main Street, instead of going straight, you kind of take the hook behind the Flatiron building, and we're right there in that 2-story building. But the view is different. I wanted the view to be completely different. I wanted you to be transported. Everybody knows Main Street down here. Not many people have ever been in that building, and to be able to have that fresh look. So yeah, definitely our social media right now, my personal social media, and even on my music pages, Alfie Silva Entertainer at Facebook. But the branding and the ad campaign, lots of merchandising. We want a lot of stuff people can take with them. We had some cool shirts before, but we're really, and the other thing that's really cool is that as we expand the space, we have actual, instruments in there that Nick and I play and sing. So, after hours, it's a great recording space and a great rehearsal space for us. And that's what you're going to get in the waiting room as we're building it out. It's going to feel like you're waiting, you're a VIP getting ready to go out on stage. It's going to be a great dressing room, recording studio, Nashville vibe, that any of the greats would be sitting in waiting. And that's what we want, that feel. We will have amazing beer from Hell and Blazes. So you'll be able to get our local brewery. We want to absolutely support our local right down the street brewery from us. Not that the other breweries in town aren't great, but I want to keep downtown, and I want the taste of downtown. Again, with that whole sense memory, I want you to think of the brewery that's right down the street too. So.
Well, we learned a lot more than I expected. We got some business training in here today. We got some, the added bonus of what to do if you're in a slump. If you're not feeling the vibe, what you can do to kind of revive yourself and have self 2.0. So thank you for that teaching as well. I wish you the best, and it's been great. And when I do interviews, I've been so fortunate to have people where I want to do part 2. There has to be a continuation. When you are up and running, I want you to join me again and talk about the business after it's been running for a couple months. And who knows, I might end up in Florida myself, and we might do a live interview, that kind of thing. But thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. And best of luck to you. And I hope you guys get open and you get to be back practicing your craft. And thank you for what you give to your audience and give to people. It's very inspirational, and it's definitely something I look forward to. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alfie Silva.